appreciate that. The nature of the sermon today is such that if you have I know some of you take your faith life very seriously, and I know you all do, but during the week you meditate on what has been preached on during the week and so forth. Today might be a day where you might facilitate that by taking notes. There are a few points, and it might help to just sort of parse it out in your head. So if you want to take notes, please feel free. I'm sure there's someone around you that has a purse with a pen or something if you need, and feel free to write on the back of your bullet. I know, that's the rains came down and the house on the rock stood firm. That's exactly the picture. Now, can you color it? Yes. Got a question for you. If you were to be left alone for, say, 3 weeks in your home, not on an island or anything like that, but just on your own for 3 weeks, your spouse isn't around, your friends aren't around, you just get a chance to have some good downtime. First week, you sort of relax, and all of your concerns about work sort of go by the wayside, or school, or whatever it might be. And you have 3 weeks to just be alone and reflect. And the one thing that you're to reflect on is your past, your life, the things that you've done, the things that you've left undone. Would there be greater sorrow? Now, if you were to be totally honest, not totally honest with me, not even totally honest with God, but just totally honest with yourself. If you didn't have to tell anyone else, but this is just between you and you, would there be greater sorrow in your life for the things that you've done, people that you've hurt, ways that you've embarrassed yourself, people that you've offended, your sins? I don't like to use the word sins, it's so loaded, but you know what I mean. Would there be greater sorrow in your life for the things that you've done, or for the consequences of the things you've done? Would you have greater sorrow over what you did, or would you have greater sorrow over the punishment that you suffered because you got caught? Maybe you cheated on a boyfriend. Maybe you stole from work, embezzled from your company. Maybe you drank and drove. Drank and drove, that's it. Would there be greater sorrow in your life for what you had done, or greater sorrow over the fact that you got caught and the punishment, the consequences that you had to endure? I'm just setting that over here. The truth is, in any sermon, anybody sits through a sermon, there are always times when your mind sort of fades a bit. You're taking in a lot of information, and so your mind is going to wander, but it always does. In any sermon, it does with me, it does with anybody. And so I would encourage you, if you find there's a time in this sermon today, or throughout your week, to come back to that question, just play with that one a little bit. What we have today in today's text, and I'll be coming back to that then towards the end of the sermon. What we have in today's text is essentially 2 texts, right? We have first the story that was read about Jesus and the wise man and the foolish man. And Jesus basically saying to his disciples and saying to all the people who are following him that the day is going to come when you're going to have to answer for your life. The day is going to come when you want to enter heaven, and the way to get into heaven is to follow my commands. And if you follow my commands, you'll be like the person who built his house upon a rock, and if you don't, you'll be like the person who built his house upon a sand. In other words, if you follow my commands, you will be strong, you will be seen as upright, and you will have a good life, and you will have a good heaven and all that. But if you don't, your life will wash away. Life will be hard, and you may not get into heaven, and so on and so forth. All right? So that's this first reading. The notion of there's a house upon a rock, and there's a house upon a sand. There's a blessing path, and there's a cursed path. And then what we have over here is the Noah story. Now, you've heard me refer to before the common lectionary. Several denominations in the world got together and they decided, okay, we're going to break down the Bible into about 3 years worth, a 3-year cycle of reading, where we basically hit all of the main texts of the Bible. And they call it the lectionary. Okay, so for every week, you could go into a Church of Christ this week, you could go into a Presbyterian church, Lutheran church, Catholic church, and they're all on these texts today, because they did about 50 years ago, they got together and they put all this together in what's called the Common Lectionary. And these are the readings, the pericope for today. And they paired these 2 together. There's actually another one from Deuteronomy that has a similar theme, and there's even one from the Psalms that has a similar theme. They paired it together because the story of Noah is not much different. The story of Noah is essentially what? God sends a flood to flood the entire earth. Why? To punish, to curse the people who had been bad, who hadn't followed his commands, and who hadn't followed his path, and who had been bad. And what happens? So the water comes, floods them out, and this big old ark rises right above it all, right? Because Noah had been upright. He had been good. Okay, first of all, water is an archetype. Water is a symbol. Water is a theme that we see often throughout the Bible. The notion of baptism, the notion of Jesus using it in this story, Noah, the great flood story. Whether or not you believe this Noah story happened exactly as it says in the Bible, that the boat was exactly 700 cubits long. A cubit is 18 inches. 50 cubits wide. Whether or not you believe it happened exactly this, and the whole earth was flooded with water, whether or not you believe it exactly jot and tittle as it is in the Bible, isn't really the point here. God is great. We have no doubt God could do it. But the point is some of these other themes that are running through this story. We see the theme of water. We're going to come back to that. It's like in a movie. You ever been to a movie? Nowadays, it's different from the 50s. If you ever went to a movie in the 50s, the person smoking the cigarette was always the cool person in the movie. Nowadays, if you want to know who the villain is going to be in the end, if there's somebody smoking a cigarette, that person's going to be the villain in the end. Every time. Unless it's like a European movie or something like that. Or, how about this one? If there's somebody in a movie named Sam, or on a TV show, Sam is like, it's a theme. It's an archetype for what? For the loyal friend, right? The TV show Cheers. Sam was the bartender that always knows your name. Wasn't it Lord of the Rings, right? The main character, his right-hand man, his faithful friend, was named Sam. How many shows will you see where the golden retriever, man's best friend, is named Sam? So we see these themes. Hi, honey. You want to stand with me today? No? You can hold my hand. Stay up here if you want. That's all right. But we see these themes, and one of them is water. And what we see in the case of water in both of these stories is that it has a twofold effect. It has a twofold effect. One, in the Noah story, it washes away. It cleanses that which was dirty or unclean or had been bad. But it also, what's that old saying? A rising tide floats all boats, right? And Noah had a very big boat. And because he had been good, he and his family rose above it. What we see in the Jesus story is that the water washes away the bad, but the house on the rock stands firm. Okay. So what we've got is these two different stories. Notion of blessings and curses. Blessings and curses. Now what we see throughout the Bible, what you're expected to follow in order to be blessed, is the 613 laws. There were 613 laws given to Moses. That includes the 10 Commandments. We always think of it as just the 10 Commandments, right? No. 613 laws. And I guarantee every single person in this room at this present moment is in violation of at least one of those laws. You want to know which one it is? Blending of fabrics. That's right. You're not to blend your fabrics. Wool and linen, cotton and polyester, silk and satin, whatever. I'm willing to bet almost everybody here, either today or in the last 48 hours, has blended their fabrics. I would also be willing to bet, did you know that there are over 35 Mosaic laws for which that are considered capital crimes, for which you shall be killed, violating the Sabbath. Anybody mow their lawn yesterday? Anybody walk more than a mile yesterday? Anybody carry a load more than a pound? You should be put to death, according to the Mosaic law. There are other ones. If you have an incorrigible child, a child that will not be tamed, will not listen, over time, according to Mosaic law, you are to take that child to the outskirts of the city, and the elders will stone your child. Punishable by death. Punishable by death. Now here's one for you. Now here's one for you to make you think. Are you aware of the fact that according to the Bible, according to specifically Exodus chapter 21, verses 20 through 24, the killing of an unborn child is not a capital crime. It is not considered murder. Write that one down. Exodus 21, verses 20 through 24. Killing a person, an adult, a child, and it's murder, and you shall be put to death. Kill an unborn child, according to Exodus chapter 21, verses 20 through 24. It is not a capital crime. Point. There are a lot of laws back then. A lot of obscure laws, a lot of different laws, and so on and so forth. And back then, in the day, long before Jesus came, those were the laws that they were to uphold. But they were not only the laws, the scribes then created all these other laws to fill in the blanks. Okay, so they had all these laws. And Jesus comes along and says, no, it's good, but I've come with a new law. He says, if you really want the blessings and want to avoid the curses, he says, I've got a new law. And so you go through the Bible and you count all of the things that Jesus specifically commanded. Not the stories that he told, and not blessed are the peacemakers, Or if you're a Monty Python fan, blessed are the cheesemakers, you know, because the guy's so far away he can't hear the story. But the actual commands,